Hello! Welcome to the Gen Ecovillage Summit, Living Solutions for a Regenerative World. My name is Makako Tamerice. I'm a sociologist, a life coach, and I have been living in the biggest ecovillage in Europe at Damanhur for almost 30 years. And I have been involved with the ecovillage world for about 15 years in different roles, and especially also for many years I have been serving as the president of Gen Europe. And today I am interviewing Karen Lee Downs. A really warm welcome, Karen. I would like to present her just for a moment. She started as a therapist and a healer in Australia and built a multi-million-dollar business. She worked on the ground in India and Bangladesh to transform the marginalization of women in the global south. And she worked also in the corporate world, helping businesses to reimagine the future of business as a force for good for people and the planet, and to shift the business paradigm of growth and performance into a new model of human flourishing for business prosperity. She trained over 1,700 people, business leaders, in a leading global organization through their program, because she is the founder and the managing director of the Flourish initiative. And the Flourish initiative really has created all these different programs that she offered to many, many different leading businesses in the world. She's also the co-founder of FAMQ, and she's the lead for gender equality in Catalyst 2030. So it's a real honor to have you here, Karen. I want to give you one more really warm welcome. And the first question that I would like to ask you, I mean, your bio and your life is really like very inspiring and very, very interesting, because you looked at life from many, many different aspects, and you had the possibility to experience life and to create something to make this world a better place and to really go into a regenerative future. So the first question that I would like to ask you is something about your personal background.
So thank you so much for inviting me into the conversation, and firstly, and to welcome everyone who's listening around the world and really that are inspired to be in action for this initiative that's so needed at this time. So I just feel very grateful to be here. So thank you. So my background, and as you mentioned, and my accent reveals, I'm Australian. So I was very fortunate to have, when I look back, that very bold Aussie pioneering spirit that I grew up in. And my background really was starting in the country. My parents had a farm, and every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up out of my bed from the age of, I think, about 3, where we would go out into the farm and we had small little calves, and I can still remember the feeling of the prickly tongue of the calf, putting the calf's head into the powdered milk to be fed, and it was very sweet. So I have I think that was my first realization of when I look back, the profound connection to nature and sentient beings, and that we had animals, we had fish, we had dogs, we had cows, and we would ride on the haystacks. And so up until it was only very young, but it was in those formative years until I was 6 years old that I had that profound experience of running free and playing every day within nature, and felt like nature was my host, was my playground. And then a very big transition into the city, because my parents thought that was a good idea to take their 3 daughters into the city to give them a future. But I don't think they realized the importance of what we had in those formative years.
That sounds really like you got a very deep connection to nature and to the essence of life when you were very young, which is, of course, an incredible base to understand life from a different point of view.
Absolutely. And have our feet bare on the ground. And I think the unconscious absorbs those messages And later, as we get older and we start to recognize what really is important to us, I think we go back to those roots that we were introduced to at a very young age. And that can be, as we all know, there's so much around trauma at the moment. There's also so much goodness that we, in our privileged world, got to benefit from.
Yeah, that's right. And it also leads me to the next question, I think, which kind of leads also into what you were just saying, which is what are you passionate about? So, what is it that you really are passionate about? What is the drive that led you also to become the person that you are today?
Gosh, what am I passionate about? I think that's such a big question because there's so many facets. But the main drive, I think, the main drive that puts a fire in my belly that takes me out into the world is really, it's the notion or the feeling that I had at a very young age of something's not right.
Yeah.
Something's not right, and how I'm feeling tells me something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that grace that was given in the space that was given for me, having a sensitivity to my surroundings. So I developed I think at a very early age, an intuition and a sensitivity and a sensibility to energy, how things were, what's disturbed, what's missing, that if we brought that thing that was missing, something new would evolve. So this sense of flourishing, I think, was in me from a very early age. And that led me into healing, the healing modalities. So I was an aerobic instructor that took care of the physical. I studied anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner's work for years. My daughter went to a Steiner school. That was spiritual, taken care of. So I think if I compartmentalized it, I was very focused on developing a skill set because I didn't finish high school. So I designed my own university, and I call it the University of Life. I went
Yes.
about studying many different forms of, studied naturopathy, nutrition. I studied aspects of neuroscience and physiology and psychology. So I was just very hungry for what would shift the barriers and constraints to the potential that human beings truly are. What would shift those barriers? Is it the constraint of not understanding our body? Is it that we need exercise? Is it that we need to understand our human relations? So I was very, very curious and passionate about unleashing and unlocking potential, which led me into every area that I've worked in. So I would say the thing I'm most passionate about is unlocking the potential of all human beings. And my focus has been in particular areas where people are constrained. And where that led me, of course, was into the global south, where women were being subjugated and marginalized. And I worked for 5 years. It would go twice a year to India and Bangladesh through an organization called the Hunger Project. And I think that's very much a part of my healing background, is not looking at the symptom, but looking at the cause, which is why I love that work.
Yeah.
They looked at the cause of the chronic persistence of hunger, which has got nothing to do with food. But one of the keys to unlocking and releasing that concern or problem is to end the subjugation and marginalization of women. So when girls are educated and women are empowered, the whole community shifts, the whole system shifts.
Mm-hmm.
So that had me go into understanding systems and how we need an open feedback loop to change the system. So as you can see, it's been a ducking and a weaving and a threading of all these notions of, primarily the thing that drives me is unlocking potential.
It really sounds like you went to the University of Life, as you said. It really sounds like that. And I completely resonate with this thing that there, even in an early age, you feel that there is something not right in this world and you want to kind of heal it. So I think this is a very strong motivation to really also find your own path in this world. And this, of course, enables you to find new ways, new methods that are not the regular methods, but it's something new, something different, because you have the possibility to look at life from different angles, you know. So I think this is really very interesting. And you already said it a little bit, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about what inspired you mainly. What were the things that inspired you and that motivated you?
I guess I look back and the term I use is defining moments. I think every single human being has them, and in that defining moment, when it occurs, we choose. Because in that defining moment, nothing is ever the same again. And if we really take hold of those defining moments and say, what is life teaching me? What is this opportunity? What do I need to see that I haven't seen before? Those very important questions, and I think COVID's doing this and the pandemic is doing this around the world. We're all asking the very big existential questions. What does this mean, and do I matter, and what can I do that does matter? So I think that for me there's been many defining moments, and one in particular was through my healing and my training when I absolutely fell in love with aromatherapy. Was the modality that I built my company on. And the reason I'm actually a little bit adverse to using that term anymore because it's been so distorted by the cosmetic industry, but the plants are our healers. And the plants, through aromatherapy and essential oils, they touch on all the senses as well as they're therapeutic. So they're activating the sense of smell, which Steiner said was the sense of intuition, activated intuition. Mm-hmm. And smell is more important to us than visual attraction. We're attracted to the pheromones and the smell and connection of others. So aromatherapy for me really opened up a world. And when that world opened up and I saw that I could teach women, and literally over the 13 years I had that company, and I didn't plan on building a multi-million-dollar business, it just happened. So I didn't perceive myself as an entrepreneur, but of course after the effect I got called that. And we were, back then in the 80s, it would have been called a B Corp or a social impact organization, because we were leading from a feminine principle. And that's what I would say was the heart and soul of our business. We didn't build teams, we built community. And
exactly.
when I look back now, that's actually what I do teach and train and advise on, is my own direct experience of building an organization that 30 years later, that business is still going. And that's a testimony to its strength and foundation, where back then, the mission of our business was to return healing to the home, to enable women to be the essence of healers and carers, and use essential oils to do that, but also to train women who had an adverse, a distorted view of their bodies, to invite them into rubbing their body with oils every day so that they saw their body as a temple to the soul. So the message that we gave over those 13 years, and someone asked me the other day, how many lives did I think we touched? Well, I would say millions, because we exported to 5 countries. My sister and I wrote 6 books, and so it was really, and we had a college where we trained practitioners. So it was really, I don't know that we had a master plan. I think the feminine way is to ask what's needed and bring it. What's needed in the family and bring it. What's needed in the community and we bring it. If it's healing or it's the feisty mother protection. So I think when I look back, that's why I'm so passionate about the feminine, because I know the difference it makes. I know when you build an organization based on these principles of people first. So I think that was a defining moment, is once we started that company, and literally with the kids bottling oils at the kitchen tabletop and building that into what it became, was an extraordinary journey. And then I moved to England and I worked and studied with Joanna Macy, and that was another turning point.
Yeah.
I did in 2001, just before the World Trade Center tragedy. I was training with Joanna in California as a facilitator of her work. And that really opened up my world and my mind into this systems change that we need, and regeneration. How do we build a life-sustaining future? And that really set me on, okay, let's do that. So that was, these defining moments that if we capture them, we do see the red thread.
That sounds so inspiring, and it sounds so much in sync with actually what the Ecovillage world is pursuing, because the eco-villages actually are communities, and they are completely community based, and they are kind of creating a new, they are a laboratory for the future, in the sense that they are exactly based on the individual, and they are based to create group together with the others, to create connection, so that every individual can really express its best inside the group. So a strong individual makes a strong group. It's not that it's not the opposite, you know. And that's so, I mean, this really resonates so much. And would you like to talk a little bit about your business, even a little bit more? What is important, and why is it important to organize businesses in a new, more inclusive way in this special moment of time? What is the specific note that you are bringing, and the specificity that you are bringing towards the corporate world, that really makes the difference?
I think back in 2012, when I created, I'll go back a step. Prior to creating the Flourish Initiative, which is my consulting and advisory business, which I also coach business leaders through, but prior to creating that, I had been traveling the world for 5 years, working in some of the toughest industries in the world, trying to transform those. So I went from oils out of plants in aromatherapy to oils out of the ground in the extractive industries. So I had 13 years of all women, and then I had 7 years of working with some of the most entrenched, dogmatic, dominant, or domineering patriarchal systems, which is in the extractive industry. So I got very profoundly in touch, and I asked, when I look back, I think, why did I do that? What was I thinking that I could change? But what I learned was that's how we got where we are. We're raping and pillaging the earth. And my correlation with my work with women, now that I make this connection, is when we look at the violence that is occurring and the abuse that's occurring biologically to women around the world at the moment, we're doing to women what we've done to the earth. Yeah. And there's now a science that makes that connection. So for a very long time, while I worked in the extractive industries, and I would often be the only female in the room, and if I wore a dress like I'm wearing now, I can remember in Australia working for one of the very big construction firms, and I walked in to do a business meeting, and someone said to me, "G'day, princess," and I thought, this is not going to go well, because the attitude and forget my capability or my skill set or whatever was behind my talent and contribution I could make, the veneer of how I was perceived was going to determine the relationship I could have with someone. And there's been many of those messages, I think, that have had me think, how many other millions of women face up to that every day? Yes. I'm a contractor and I'm a consultant, and I can move out of that system, but some of them are in the system and face that every day. So I got to see in those very big, bold industries, and that's not to say I don't want to generalize and say that that's all men, but those men are in a system that they can't quite see their own behavior. It's so perpetuated, as we know in systems. If there's the feedback loop affirming that what we're doing is a good thing and our behavior is affirmed, the system continues to play itself out. Yeah. So I realized that I was not making any headway, and I was really not making any difference in the consciousness of these people. And I was in burnout. So I was traveling back-to-back long-haul flights around the world, and I went, what am I doing? Wake up. Where's my well-being? And what's really needed now is the well-being of people, because everyone's burnt out, including me. So I created the Flourish Initiative and started designing programs that put people first with the consciousness to planet. And I started putting together the concept and the ideas of human flourishing is critical for business prosperity. If you do not have people that are flourishing, you cannot have long-term prosperity in an organization. People will burn out and leave. And the millennials are showing us that now, where they won't even work for a company that hasn't got a purpose and hasn't got a set of values to make a difference. So I think for me, that's the shift I made. And most importantly, when you mentioned the course that I designed for a very big commercial airline, and we trained literally 1,700 of their business leaders. I created a 2-day program, and myself and my team, and one of my team members was my daughter, which was amazing because she was standing by my side leading these programs. And we had 40 people in every 2-day workshop, and we did 49 workshops. It was a marathon.
Amazing.
So we did, and one of the things that was amazing about it and the testimonials we had, some people would say they didn't like it because we were tree huggers, and then others would say it's changed my life. So we had these two extremes of perspectives of how people came into the work and how they left. But the majority of people would say it was the first time that the company had ever invested in something for them personally that made a difference in their personal life and their performance at work. Now, if those two are separated and we think that who we are at work is different to who we are at home, we're seeing from neurology, neuroscience, from psychology and philosophy all combined in those sciences. That's not true. Because if for 12 hours a day that you're at the office, or 8 hours a day you're at the office, or now on Zoom, on back-to-back Zoom calls, you do not have time to reconstitute, renew, and rebuild in order to spend quality time with your family, or to take time out for exercise, or to take time out for pausing and reflection and an imaginative moment, a creative moment. So how do we imagine a future when there's no space? How do we use our imagination when there's no place or value placed on the importance of imagination?
That's so true. I so resonate with what you're just saying. And I also wonder, I mean, a question that comes to me is really, how come that such a big airline is really willing to look at such a kind of program that you are proposing? Because it's kind of, it really puts the accent on a completely different focus.
For sure. And what I think was really amazing is, firstly, the woman who was in charge of training and development, or learning and development in the company.
It was a
Firstly,
woman.
it was a woman, exactly. So what was amazing, it's the first time I've ever had such a big company ring me cold calling. Hello, are you Karen from the Flourish Initiative? We love your name. We want to talk to you. I was like, really? Wow. Because it's usually someone's introduced me or I'm going in to present, but this was just out of the blue. They didn't know me and they picked up the phone based on my website and said, please come and talk to us. That was number one, extraordinary.
Wow.
Number two, yeah. Number two, this woman said, what is flourishing? Because whatever it is and whatever you mean by it, I think we need it.
Wonderful.
Now that's intuition. That's the question that I love to ask people, not what's the problem, but what is missing? Mm-hmm. That if you put that piece in, it would change everything.
Yeah.
And it's a much more powerful question to consider. And so when we started the conversation, they were saying, of course, we need culture change. The people have had so many changes. They don't trust the environment anymore because there's been so many leaders and changing of positions. So they were dealing with, again, they could see the symptoms, but they couldn't see the cause. So how do we shift that? How do we shift trust? So we built the program about flourishing from a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual perspective. How do we use all intelligences? And how can we take, and I use the science behind the circumstances that affect our lives versus the choice we can make about the circumstances. So we really went in with the notion that we wanted to shift the perspective from it's all about the leaders and bring it back to how much choice do I have? Do my leaders really tell me to eat lunch at my desk every day? Of course not. No. Oh, but you don't understand my circumstances. Okay, but what's it costing you? What are the habits that you now have adopted that are unconscious? So that body of work that we did over a 12-month period, and then we trained the facilitators inside the organization to continue the work. So the company ended up with a group, I think it was 12 in the end, of facilitators that were leading our program after we left. So we wanted to make
One.
sure that the message continued and that people could continue, because we were training top leaders and they flew them in from all over the world, whether it was an engineer, an airport manager, a duty manager, or a flight supervisor. And those people are dealing with some of the most traumatic situations and circumstances that you can imagine. And I can remember one flight supervisor saying to us, Karen, there's only so many arguments that you want to have happen at 35,000 feet. So you think about what they deal with in their nervous systems. Wow. And what resources they need for resilience. It's extraordinary. Yeah. It's extraordinary.
And if
they were saying,
oh, sorry.
No, they were saying, I remember one woman saying, and we actually had one of the women that had been at the very start of the organization. She's been there for many, many years. And she was saying the stories that we would hear. But even, for example, after 9/11, their safety manual went from this to this. Mm-hmm. And so what they have to learn, and they get 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I think it is, in a flight briefing before they have to be a team on the plane. So you and I have got time and we say, let's catch up, let's have a meeting. These people are on from the moment they show up at work, and they have to build team very, very quickly. So it was really such an amazing awakening for me of what it takes and what it takes in an organization to, like that, build trust. And if we don't have trust in an organization, we will not perform and we will not bring our discretionary effort.
Exactly. And also our nervous system is under continuous stress, because if you don't trust, you are like alert all the time, which is really stressing your nervous system a great deal, and which really leads to burnout. Yeah,
exactly.
And when if you don't really build a strong group in that kind of circumstances, it's like hell, you know. It's like
exactly.
Yeah. And how would you imagine empowered community actions, and what would they look like for you, and how can this contribute to the change that the world needs?
I think the notion of community is, if we break down that word, it's to commune, which is to, in history and in tribes, they use ceremony and ritual to bring that about. And ritual is often associated to religion. But firstly, I would say that many people I speak to about building a community would say that they share values. But I don't think that's enough. Mm-hmm. Because I can share values, but then I can exclude those that don't share my values, and then the community mm-hmm. breaks down. Mm-hmm. So my own view these days, having done a lot of this work, and what constitutes a community is, one, always a shared purpose. Why are we here? Mm-hmm. What's our ambitions or our aspirations? Shared values are critical, but also the rituals and agreements that are designed into the system.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that nature, when we look at her, and I'm looking out at the jungle because I'm privileged enough to be in Costa Rica right now, is nature doesn't have explicit agreements, but there's an implicit ritual and rhythm and cycle that moves through nature. And those cycles and rhythms are often not instituted in organizations or communities. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, to give you an example, is when I was building my own business and do have a profound sense of building a community, every morning, and this doesn't have to be what anyone else does, but I'm pointing to the notion of a ritual, is every morning oil vaporizers were lit around the office, so that when someone walked into the building, it was a sense of, I'm home, or things are this way here. There's a sense of comfort and there's a sense of familiarity, and there's a sense of, I know this to be important, and I know myself to belong here. Now, that's an intrinsic thing that it's very difficult to measure, but the embodied wisdom of our system feels this.
Yes.
It's a little like when we say something smells fishy around here, and we use these phrases, but our sensitivities and our embodied wisdom, which I'm trained in, that embodied somatic intelligence is very, very important to us. So when the community is built, when the community forms itself, I would say that these rituals and these agreements are very important, so that people know that they can be safe to walk into a space. And especially at the moment on Zoom, because all of our lives are being spent on, most of our lives are being spent in these meetings. If we're working, we're online. Yep. And what is taking us away from our human connection is we cut the Zoom call off and we go on to the next one. And there's no download, there's no integration, there's no, oh, let's have a coffee, let's be together. So this sense of disruption is very calculated. And
that's so true.
And so we don't realize what we're missing out on, these very personal human rituals of catching up over a coffee or a drink or whatever that is. So firstly, the rituals, and then secondly, the agreements. And I'm working on a project here in Costa Rica with a group of people on Regenerate Costa Rica. The ICU and Edward Muller, who heads up the university, is wanting Costa Rica to be an exemplar for the rest of the world. Firstly, they demilitarized 40 years ago. So there's a basis for a very big shift in consciousness here because of what's been created. But one of the communities I went out to visit that they're working with, because tourism had such a very big hit on people's livelihood and incomes here when COVID happened. A lot of the local people in Costa Rica work in the tourism industry. And so because they had no livelihood, Edward created a project with his team where he went out with training them in permaculture and how to grow their own vegetables. So one of the plots of land that was given to 30 families that I visited, there was this huge tree, and under the tree, the 30 families had gathered when they knew that they had this plot of land had been given to them, and they had to set a set of agreements in place. They'd never worked together before. They knew each other, but they'd never worked together before in this way. So they decided on the time that would be allocated for each family to give, that would nourish and nurture and look after the plot of land and the vegetables. And then they made other agreements. They made an agreement that they would never bring their upset or anger into the property because it was fenced off. So by the time they got to the gate, they would leave the upsets or their baggage or their discontent outside, so that when they sowed the soil and when they planted the seeds, that it was planted with love. Now, they weren't told to do that. What emerged out of that community, knowing that they needed to put some structure in place and some agreements in place, and I would connect that, those agreements are often ritualized. So when I get to the gate, I'm about to walk into the property, this is the way I will be when I sow the seeds. This is the way I will be. And when a colleague who was doing a documentary on it, I said to her, I wonder what the women feel about, because a lot of the men have gone back into tourism and the women are doing a lot of the work in the gardens right now. And one of the questions she asked when she was interviewing the woman, she said, do you think there's any correlation between Mother Earth and women? And this beautiful woman, she said, turned around and went, of course. She bears fruit and we bear fruit. Yeah. So I thought, I'm going to use that story so much. It's like, of course.
Yeah, lovely.
So these stories, the rituals, and I think businesses don't realize how important ritual is. And honoring the seasons. You know that from looking at my website, I talk about the seasons of the soul.
Yes.
We don't honor the seasons of the soul.
That's right.
We've been through a very long winter with the pandemic, in isolation, hibernation, and lockdown. That's a very long winter.
That's a very long winter.
A winter of the soul, where our hearts and souls and our sensitivities have been locked up. And now spring is here and we want to burst out.
Yeah, this leads me to my next question. How did COVID affect your life? How do you think did COVID affect the business world and the corporate world and the world of the people around you? And does it bear any, is it only a problem, or also does it bear opportunities?
Oh, for sure. And I think everyone's recognizing that. And to make it very distinct, because of my healing background, a crisis produces one of two things. A crisis produces a sharp or exponential shift in the way we live. So someone gets diagnosed with a terminal disease and they make a choice. They'll continue to do what they've always done and diminish their health or die. We're all going to, but we have a choice in these crisis moments. Or it's an opportunity to change behavior. It's an opportunity to reevaluate how I'm living and who I'm living with. And we're seeing this around the world. So I think it's both. I think the important aspect is that we do look at the crisis, when we look at the parallels of crisis and opportunity, the four, and I work with this in my programs, the four catalysts for change are typically crisis, pressure, threat, and threat. Crisis, pressure, and threat. They're all based on fear. Mm-hmm. And when we're making choices from fear, at the moment, for example, climate change, no question, we're in a crisis state. But if we're making our choices and our behavior is based on fear, as you said earlier about the nervous system shuts down and we become very narrowed in our perspective and we want to solve or bring a solution to a problem. The alternative is desire, imagination, and intuition. And that's love. Yes. So, for example, if I have a health crisis, I'm going to make a choice immediately to rectify what's needed. Versus when I fell pregnant with my daughter, that was another catalyst for change. Everything changed. Everything I did, the way I thought, my identity, everything changed. But it was based on love and life, not fear and devastation. So I think the big shift we need, certainly for me, and I think organizations need to make, is not how do I fix the immediate of mental health issues, but in the bigger question that I want to, whoever's listening, is ask the question, how do I ensure my people flourish? It's a much bigger question. Mm-hmm. So are we concerned about just the mental health issues and it's a band-aid or a fix on a problem? Or shall we take it in a much bigger perspective, and do we have to change everything about the way we live and think and organize ourselves? So I think that's the opportunity. And personally, how it affected me in March last year, it's actually exactly a year ago today. So it's interesting you're asking me the question. When lockdown was just about to start in the UK, is I had this question come to me from somewhere: who would I be if I wasn't me?
Wow, what a question. That's amazing. And who would you be if you weren't you?
1 year later, I found out. So 1 year later, 1 year ago, I had just been, a contract had just been cancelled with a very big corporate. I was about to fly to Dubai. Everything got cancelled. The meeting got cancelled. Everyone was told, no, don't come. 250 people were supposed to be coming to that event that we'd been planning for 5 months. So that stopped a very big project. And then I asked, who would I be if I wasn't me? And I couldn't figure it out. So I spent COVID and isolation figuring it out. But in October, I moved to Costa Rica. Now I'm working on a regenerative project. I'm working with organizations that are truly committed to flourishing. And I will not deviate from my values. I'm here to make a difference. That's what changed. So I was already making a difference, but I still justified working for organizations because I needed an income.
Yes.
So now that's shifted even more. It's like, if I don't, exactly, if I do not hear the authenticity of a business leader saying I'm truly vested in the well-being of my people first, and I know that will give me the business return I need, and I know that we have to make a difference on the planet, then if those three aren't met, and then I'll have to figure out another way to earn a living.
Yeah.
But
I have seen many times in my personal life that's when you really align with your inner values and with your inner truth, synchronicity plays in opportunities that will help you to move on, at least to move on. You know, there will always be opportunities to move on. I think there is really the universe is really taking care of us, despite what we might see now with the COVID and with everything, because of course there's huge breakdown in this moment in the whole world, and many things are changing. And especially people like us who were used to travel all the time and to see many different new things and so on and so on, it also feels like being caged in. And I think this is also exactly what you said before when you said that your soul was feeling in the winter time, you know, in the deep winter time, because it's also like really feeling caged in. And at the same time, if we are caged in physically, we have to find our freedom inside of us. And this is so important. Yeah. And this leads me also to my next question. So our life is shaped by the stories that we tell individually and collectively. And what old stories do you think we are telling ourselves collectively? And when you imagine a new story for us collectively, what is the new story that we should tell?
Beautiful, beautiful. So it's actually building on what I said a moment ago about coming to Costa Rica and saying, who would I be if I wasn't me? It leads me into the new story of me. So my challenge and my question to everyone, including myself, is not what is the new story out there. Firstly, what's the new story in here?
Mm-hmm.
What's the new story I will tell about myself? What's the new story that I want to construct about myself?
Mm-hmm.
So when I came here to Costa Rica, and I didn't know, because my daughter's here, so everyone said, oh, you're going to see your daughter. I said, I am, and my colleague is doing this regenerative project. But when I got here, what was a surprise is that I'm also co-founder of an organization called FemQ, Feminine Intelligence, which all genders have access to. It's just that it's been subordinated and marginalized for centuries. So I
Would you like
started...
to tell something more about that organization? I would so love to hear something about it.
Of course, I'll weave it into the story, because when I came here, and I was so, and as I said, I'm looking out at the jungle right now, and she just speaks to me every day. So it's an extraordinary place to be, by the ocean, in the jungle. And I met with Stefan and Annetta, who are co-founders of Blue Spirit Retreat here in Nasara. And my daughter and I, my daughter's been connected to FemQ, or part of FemQ, since we began. And my daughter and I met with them, and I had this strong feeling that FemQ needed to happen in Costa Rica, because Mother Earth so speaks to us here, and we can't escape her messages. And it's like, wow, what an opportunity. So who would I be if I wasn't me turned into, this is who I'd be. I'd live in Costa Rica. I'll bring FemQ. I'm going to bring a global gathering. The movement will happen. But the new story happened in me first. The new story of the feminine arose in me like never before, because I got so profoundly in touch with the air. I do breathing exercises. I've done these modalities all my life and worked in healing and taught people mindfulness, etc., etc. But the minute I got, oh, air, breath, I am one with it. Wow. And it was like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but it was like this awakening. Oh my word, I am it. It is me, in such a profound way. And I knew we had to do FemQ here. So we've been doing, so the new story firstly occurred in me, and I had to ask myself, What do I need to deconstruct in myself that I've been so colonized by the system? My father telling me I can do anything, and I was feisty and I was bold, but I lost the grace. I lost the feminine because it was not valued by the system.
Yes.
And I think world over, men and women and all genders are not recognizing the system we signed up into unconsciously. Education, religion, science, every sector of society is dominated or being created by men.
Yeah, yeah.
And the toxic masculine. So that's the new story in me. It's like, oh, I'm deconstructing me. So I come back to my true essence. I come back to what I know my heart and soul is yearning for. And then the thing I'm doing in the new story is feminine intelligence. It's here. Please come to Costa Rica in July. So everyone has been saying to me, you're crazy. The notice is too short. People won't come. And then I was invited as a guest into a retreat a week ago, and 26 women and 2 men were in the retreat, all of them saying, I decided in 2 minutes, I decided a week ago, I decided 2 weeks ago, I had to get out. And just to be here is to breathe again. And I went, I'm not silly. This is the confirmation. People want to come, and they can come. So we're building this worldwide global event where we'll have people in person. There's only 60 people we're taking because of social distancing. Normally there's 120 can be in the retreat, but we're taking only 60 participants. It's going to be a week-long program, and people will have time to renew, to regenerate. And if we don't regenerate in here, how can we do our work? So it's the dynamic flow. We need regeneration. We need renewal. And all of my friends like you who are working tirelessly to create a new future need time out, need to pause. And so we're going to have 40 amazing speakers leading programs and panels and dialogue and workshops. It's be bilingual in Spanish. We're so excited. And we're going to have hubs around the world. So I'd love all of your community to host FemQ hubs around the world. So we're going to bring in those. I know, we're so excited. So we're bringing in all of the contributors from around the world that are regenerating the planet, because our theme is regeneration.
That sounds so amazing. Oh yeah, I would really love to be there. I would love to come to Costa Rica and to experience this luxurious nature and the feminine aspect of it. It sounds like really a huge story, something a very deep experience, and that really connects you with your deeper soul.
And don't we need it right now? Don't we need it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we really do. I mean, just to close, we are almost finishing our interview, but before we close, I would really like to ask you also a question about your books. So that the people can also find something about your books and understand about your work.
Primarily, unfortunately, they've I'm so busy, I don't take time out to write, but primarily the 5 that we wrote were on aromatherapy, and then I wrote one called Sacred Spaces. And people should be able to find that online. And if they look for my name, Karen Lee Downs, they should be able to find those titles on Amazon. But the principal one for an introduction into the world of aromatherapy is just a very simple one I wrote called Aromatherapy 101. It was done by Hay House. But I just really encourage people to bring, if you can't be out in nature, many people have been saying to me, it's all very well for you, Karen, in Costa Rica, but I'm in my flat in London. And so I would encourage people, because I don't want people to feel that they're missing something, or of course we're missing something by not being out and being in nature and being with each other. Of course we're feeling that. But where we can, self-massage, which I've taught for decades, is so critical. Touch is so critical to our system, and using the benefits of essential oils to bring nature to us, to enhance our sensitivities and our sensibilities, and to build our immune system. So the books are primarily aromatherapy, and I'm in the process. I run a women's leadership program called Leading with Grace and Resilience, and that's the book I'm writing at the moment.
Oh,
So hopefully
wonderful.
soon.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah,
Sounds like really amazing.
yeah.
Wonderful.
The other
I
thing
want
that
to thank you so much.
oh, my pleasure. Just one more thing I would add is that because I'm doing work online versus reading something, because I'm so kinesthetic and experiential, one of the things that I've done that came to me last year, and I've done 3 seasons of it now, is the 12 virtues of the human spirit of Rudolf Steiner's work, based on Steiner's work, and my interpretation of that. And so if people are interested in really going more deeply into that, who am I being when I go out into the world, they can find me on my website with the 12 virtues, and we'll be starting a new series in a couple of weeks.
Sounds amazing. Is there anything else you would like to add
No,
that
I
I
think it's
didn't
been
ask?
not at all. I think it's been such a beautiful journey with you, and would encourage anyone that wants to get in touch there, where they're really wanting to step up and rebuild their lives from that aspect of flourishing, and to from organizational perspective, just really reach out and have a conversation about what you can do differently as a leader to regenerate your people and bring about regeneration on the planet, which is why we're connected. This is what we need.
I completely resonate with what you're saying, and I think it is so important. And coming, as I said, from a community background, I can only enhance what you're saying. I can only underline what you're saying, that it's really so important because in community, you really learn to give value to to the individual, and so that the individual really becomes part of the group and creates the group, and the group can't do without anybody because everybody has a very specific note, a very specific frequency to give to the world, and only that person can give that kind of frequency. So we are all really needed, and it's so important to to really realize how important everybody is. And I think this is exactly in the sense of flourishing, to make people flourish.
Yes, we don't judge whether an oak tree is better than a eucalyptus tree. We know that they're both beautiful. So I love that
Exactly.
you finish on that note. Thank you
And
so
I
much,
really,
Makako.
oh, I thank you so much. I really thank you so much. And this is such a beautiful contribution to the Gen Summit. And I would love to come to Costa Rica to your program and to read your new book. And I would invite everybody to really get in touch and to have a look at her website. You will learn a lot about her work. Okay, so have a good day. And thank you so much once more.
Thank you so much.